Hello. Okay, let's put this up. Oh, it looks like it's as cold in your room as it is in ours, Alex. Either that or you're just ready to go home. We have to turn the heat on every time we come in here. This room is like locked off. I see you, Jasmine. Just a minute. What's up? Oh, she's just saying.
To leave. Wait, what?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I had to leave at like 4 o'clock today because I have a quiz bowl thing to go to, and it's kind of far away. So.
Okay.
Just heads up.
You're taking the bus?
No, but we have to be there at like a different school for, what time is it? Like 4:30. Okay. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we will. There was a bit of a little mini drama, a little MSON drama, I guess. There's some question about one of the videos that was shown in one of the classes. I don't think it was ours, because I don't think I ever had you watch any of the videos during class. But somebody had somebody watch something during class that YouTube said was flagged as not shareable. So now we have to wait to get our stuff posted again. So what my long conversation of a way of getting back to saying that the old classes won't be posted for a while until we get that figured out. But after that, then the old class will be posted, and you can look at that. Okay, so thank you for those of you who shared with me. I think I heard from everybody, or almost everybody, about which of the topics you have chosen from this document right here, this regional ethics bowl. I'll open it up so you can see it. Interesting, you might want a little like informal poll of what you all chose to do and what were the most popular topics. Most of you chose to do the one about lying to your parents. I'm not sure what that says. I'm thinking about it. This is not opening. Here we go. Come on. So as I said, these are developed nationally for the Ethics Bowl. And honestly, I have to say, this year they seem to be particularly, what's the adjective? Real life-ish. There's a better word for it, I'm sure. But the idea of the ethics of hairstyles in the Army, the ethics of dating, this one in particular, dating a friend's ex. Generally, there were more current events / big issue-ish as opposed to personal issues. But nonetheless, so we've already had our competition, and we actually were judged on a number of these. So I was sort of interested in doing this lesson today after I'd heard like what some of the judges said about some of these cases. But the ones that we're going to go over today are immunization program as a cover for spying operations, and I believe it's the one not too far down here, this heart attack grill. So maybe, Jasmine, I'll let you say, do you have any preference which one we do first? Do you have one that you'd like to make sure to be here for more than the others?
Not really.
It doesn't matter to you? Okay.
No.
Well, I think I'll start with the one that is immunization as a cover for spying. I've got a dragon picture. I don't want a dragon picture. Hold on. Please let me back in the internet. I'm going to have to turn my Wi-Fi off for a second and then turn it back on again in order to fix this. Does yours work?
Yeah, but we're in different networks.
Well, but sometimes like the whole server thing is bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so down at the bottom of this page that says structured academic controversy has this picture of Emmanuel here. Down under. Oh, it didn't get saved. Oh, rats. Okay, never mind. We'll have two things. We'll have to use two. I had a visual that I was going to share with you, but it's really a combination of reminding us what structured academic controversy involves, which is this. So we'll leave this open on one window, and then I'll flip over. I'll just use the cases from the other window. We'll flip back and forth to read them. So remember, we're looking for, as we discussed today, relevant facts. So these are fair questions for me to ask you to comment on. What are the facts of the case? Who are the stakeholders? What are their concerns? Arguments, let's just say, argument alternative A versus alternative B, and there might even be C, D, E. Fair enough? Make sense? And then after we go through the arguments, then we want to talk about how would we come up with a solution for those arguments. And that's where you would say, based on this perspective or multiple perspectives. Okay, so let's look at immunization programs as a cover for spying operations. And I actually I had this all linked and everything. Okay. I was going to go through a little bit of background myself, and then we'll read the case. Or maybe we should read the case. Yeah, let's read the case first. Come on, there we go. Okay, who would like to? Can you see enough from the screen to read it out loud? Is it close enough to any of you? Okay, Alex?
I also have a copy on my computer, so I can just read it from there too.
Good. Could you just do a little dramatic reading for us, please?
All right.
You don't have to use a funny voice.
At the 41st World Health Assembly in 1988, a goal was set for the worldwide eradication of polio by the year 2000. The Global Polio Eradication Initiative was undertaken by the World Health Organization, United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. Today, however, polio is still active in Afghanistan, Nigeria, and Pakistan. In Pakistan, there are 198 known cases of polio. Polio vaccination programs have a long history of controversy among Muslims in Pakistan. Rumors that vaccinations are a Western plot to sterilize women and that some vaccines contain the AIDS virus have gained traction in recent years. Some Muslims believe that according to Islamic law, vaccines are unclean. The WHO and UNICEF have partnered with Islamic scholars and clerics to issue fatwas, legal opinions in Islamic faith stating that vaccinations are safe to help eradicate polio and other diseases. Recently, public health officials from Tulane University, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and other universities uncovered proof that the recent increase in polio is connected to a secret spy operation. That is, a polio vaccination program was used by the CIA to help gain information on the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. In January 2013, a total of 13 schools of public health wrote to President Obama urging him to stop the use of vaccine programs as cover for spying operations. The universities argued that the practice needed to be stopped to protect humanitarian volunteers and gain back the trust of the Pakistani people, many of whom are vulnerable to polio. In May of 2014, Lisa O. Monaco, assistant to the President for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism, responded to the 13 universities by stating that the CIA will now make no operational use of vaccination programs, which include vaccination workers. Since the inauguration of the vaccination spying program in Pakistan, More than 60 polio workers, humanitarian volunteers, and security personnel have been killed. Pakistani villagers have chased off humanitarian workers in fear of CIA spying. The WHO has stated that polio has reemerged as a public health emergency in Pakistan.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let me share with you this, just for the sake of elaborating a little bit. In some cases, it's kind of dissecting it out, and in other cases, it's just an elaboration. Where's the PowerPoint? There it is. So, the ruse, this is the actual Pakistani national, Shakil Afridi, he's a physician who actually did give hepatitis vaccines or Hep B vaccines to children, hoping that he could get DNA samples from bin Laden's children that could be compared with other family members to sort of say where people were living, to confirm as, intelligence information. He was then arrested by Pakistan's inter-services, they're basically their CIA, for working with American intelligence agents. And he is still in jail in Pakistan, although his sentence has been shortened, but he is at this point still held captive. So this was the response that, this is a really bad color in our room, but it says the CIA claims no more vaccination programs will be used as spying cover-ups. And if we go back to the language that was in the quote here, I think it's interesting. No operational use of vaccination programs, which include vaccination workers. And I think that grammatically that makes a difference whether or not there's a comma there, right? So it's saying programs that include vaccination workers as opposed to those programs which do. But that we can argue that point in a minute. Just what is polio? I mean, it's thankfully it's actually not that familiar to most of us anymore. It's potentially fatal. It is infectious. There's no cure, but there is a vaccine that is quite safe, quite widespread, used quite in a widespread fashion, and it has been very effectively used to stop the disease from spreading, which is usually through water sources. And the symptoms are ultimately paralysis. And the most, probably in the United States, the most familiar case is Mr. Roosevelt here. And it's just interesting. It shows a picture of the braces that he wore whenever he walked in public. He either leaned on somebody or used, not a walker, but like a cane. And at some point, he couldn't even do that. But it's just like this. So this was like his first layer of support. So for every clinical case, this is interesting, 200 subclinical that are just going to look since it's a summer cold, the idea that the polio virus is more present in the atmosphere, it's killed by cold. So the incidence goes up in the summer. So people who don't really have severe symptoms can still spread the virus, and the people that get that spread infection can develop a serious infection. So the severity of the infection is dependent upon the patient, not the type of virus. And even the people who are infected with what will turn out to be a crippling strain do not know that they are sick for a week or more. So then, of course, you're spreading at that point. And because the virus is spreading throughout your body at that point. Okay, so probably maybe some of your parents were in the category of people who were pre-vaccine. Probably, I mean, maybe more like your aunts and uncles or young grandparents. But anyone that was growing up to the early 50s wouldn't have been vaccinated, and so they would have had this. You'll probably hear stories about, well, their parents wouldn't let them go swimming in the summer, or they had to avoid places anywhere water cross-contamination could have happened. It says our country was polio-free in 1979. Endemic meaning still an epidemic, still present. Afghanistan, Nigeria, Pakistan, and also who knows where it may have originated, but these are it's not native in, but it is established there. Polio virus reintroduced and continues to spread Syria, Cameroon, and the Horn of Africa. Okay. The vaccines, you probably had a injection of an inactivated vaccine. Your parents probably have the kind of inactivated vaccine that made a sort of a big scar. Yours, you probably don't even notice it anymore. I remember when I was a kid, I also had an oral polio vaccine. So most of what's used throughout the world is this oral, because it's faster and easier to do. But it requires, as you can see, multiple. It's a pretty big procedure. 2 months, 4 months, 16 to 8 months. So that's 6 to 18 months, excuse me. So that's 3 doctor visits for, yet less than year-old babies, which is kind of a big deal, right? You can't wait until a baby is 6 months old and then start. A booster dose at 4 to 6 years. So, a vaccine program requires this ongoing. It's not a one-time in and out. These are the myths that they talked about in the case. Why should we care? Just to put it in terms of some numbers that we could use, as long as it remains anywhere as a threat everywhere, and a failure to eradicate polio could result in as many as 200,000 new cases. Okay. Why can't we just immunize ourselves? Why do we need to eradicate the disease? This is, again, some background facts. Some people can't take the vaccine, so that's a population. Think stakeholder. Some people may be exposed in the future to a mutated form of the vaccine, of the virus. If the virus mutates, then the vaccine that we have now will no longer provide protection. So just saying, well, vaccinate, as opposed to eradicate. There's a key difference here. Why is it not good enough just to continue immunizing? Why do we want to totally erase? From a public health point of view, you're worried about the future. So think about that as stakeholders. And this is particularly in Pakistan. Okay, under what circumstances in any, actually I'm going to stop there, because at this point we're getting to the question of our ethics, and I think I want to come up with those questions on our own. So back to here. Actually, let's look at this. Okay, so why don't we start from the left? Sam, why don't you start us out by just telling us, reviewing some of the facts that you think are the most meaningful, or the facts that deserve to be on our list, facts that affect your further thought on this issue.
Well, I think that definitely one of the most important facts to remember is that what you said earlier, if it's a threat somewhere, then it's a threat everywhere. And that it has remained a problem in several countries. And along those same lines, that the vaccine can stop working.
Okay. All right. Anybody want to add anything? Jade?
I thought it was pretty relevant that it said in the ethics bold place that a lot of the people who are working there to give them vaccines, like the security personnel, have been killed because they don't trust us.
Okay. So personnel killed, personnel in harm, killed or less, but still serious. All right. What else would people like to say? Well, this is what I read that influences my response. I almost said opinion, but it's a response. Okay. Sorry, Jasmine and then Nick.
I was gonna say the thing that most influenced my response was the fact that these countries and the people in the countries are now unwilling to take the vaccines because they don't trust us. So like that's an even bigger problem because not only can we just can't give them to now because they literally won't take it.
Okay, so the change in the public health, what do you call that when compliance, right? Nick?
This might be included with that. Has anyone mentioned that people have died as a result of backlash against this?
So the personnel were in harm.
Yeah, 60 people
or killed.
Have died as a result of backlash against the CIA.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think we're missing some of the easy facts, too. Yep. Alex?
Well, the United States government basically implicated themselves. They admitted that they had spied in the past. So, that is a fact now.
Okay. Good. So the government our government has admitted, okay? Some of the most obvious things. We're talking about a disease here. Brittany?
One of the things I was going to say is that polio, it's a very assumingly painful disease, maybe not necessarily physically, but definitely mentally at least. And then also for kind of the other side of the coin, the CIA through spying were able to gain information that may or may not have led to the killing of bin Laden, as in it sounds like it was helpful in the whole operation, but perhaps it could have been done another way. So I think that might be important to note.
Okay. Yeah, it is a fact that information was gained. I mean, as far as we know, and we're talking about the CIA here. So I mean, I'm going based on the information that I'm given here, right? But from this information, according to the cases we have several universities uncovered proof that there was an increase in polio connected to the spy operation. And then the next sentence says the vaccine program was used by the CIA to help gain information. And if you look up information on the Pakistani physician, that is played out in his trial. I mean, he was actually convicted of stealing some of the vaccine material from the place where he was working. So he created this in order to create this front of a vaccine program. Some of the materials that he actually used were things that he had taken without permission or without program. Okay. Let's see. Is it a fact? Is it good factual information that other institutions, universities, humanitarian agencies have spoken up in opposition? Would you put that in the factual information category? Sam.
I feel like although it is a fact, it's not really a relevant fact for this part of the 5 structured academic controversy points. We could put it under arguments.
Okay. So, and you're saying that I'm gonna argue against you, and you tell me whether it makes a difference what I'm saying or whether you have a different opinion. I'm just for the sake of sort of uncovering this. Does it give credibility to an argument if if organizations like public schools of public health wrote to President Obama to urge him to stop the use of the programs? Does that give the fact that there's some other agency speaking to what is ultimately going to be one of our options, right, to stop the program, to say that the program should be stopped, to legislate against the program, however we want to phrase that. Does it give more credibility or power to that argument if we have other voices of authority speaking in favor of it?
I think it does give it more credibility, especially because these universities in this case are very reputable. But
okay, is something nagging at you that it's different still?
I don't really know.
Okay, well, let's continue. Go ahead.
I agree with Sam. I think that it's definitely worth including because it does lend credence to the fact that this isn't a real issue, so to speak. But I think we should consider, their sort of interests in doing so, as well as the CIA's. Because it's not, bad that they're speaking out, but a school of public health probably is not going to be focused as much on national security as the CIA is.
Okay.
And conversely, the CIA might not focus as much on public health as they might national security.
Okay. All right, let's start, since we've kind of gotten into that realm, let's start listing off some stakeholders here. Maddie or Alex, let's hear from you guys. Give us some stakeholders.
Go ahead.
The Pakistanis who have polio, and then
So current patients there, yeah, all right.
And the people surrounding them that haven't been vaccinated or won't be vaccinated.
Okay. So sick people living with the sick people or just working or existing, in the same space. Okay. Keep going. Brittany.
Since it involves bin Laden, I think pretty much anyone who could be harmed by him, so anyone in Pakistan and just, frankly, a lot of people, if not everyone in the United States, from him not dying.
Yeah. And if you look, a great way to, as you're writing your own personal assignments tonight, or if you've already written it, whenever you come across any published information on any of these more widespread public issues, not so much dating your friend's ex, but the commentary at the bottom of the news article pretty much guaranteed to bring out the extremes. And justifiably, one of the extremes is, let's total up the number of people who are killed or affected in some way by terrorism. It's a pretty big number. Is Osama bin Laden a stakeholder? Would he have been a stakeholder? Alex?
Well, I think that, he is affected and his plans are affected based on the actions based on the outcome of the event. So I think in that sense, he does hold stake in the outcome. He doesn't want to be disrupted or killed, of course, so he wants the program to be abolished. And from our perspective, ironically, he is the stated enemy of our country, but on the other hand, we're sort of saying, well, yeah, but, his stake, so therefore his stake is not as important. It's not as important. That's not the best word. It's not as valued. But stakeholding isn't really about whether you deserve it or not. It's just whether or not you're there, whether or not you're in that position. Later, when we talk about the arguments for or against various outcomes,
then we can devalue or supervalue, if that's a word. Nick?
I'm just flashing back to the other PowerPoint you showed, but I feel that it talked about in the actual profiling part that it was like his relatives or people staying with him who were profiled. So to make it even more agreeable, you could say Osama bin Laden and like, I don't know, people in his group that could have been profiled.
I mean, he might have had, I'm trying to remember who actually was killed in that raid. Definitely a wife.
Several wives.
And many children, right? Or numerous children. So, I mean, does a 2 or 3-year-old child, this is a whole nother question. This is a question about who's vulnerable in time of war, right? What is the ethics of civilian deaths in time of war? And are some civilians more valued than other civilians, or less valued? Those that are in a family or in an association with leaders. I think if we were talking about our own, I'd have a hard time saying that, President Obama's daughters are more vulnerable than anybody else, but I'm sure that to enemies, they are, right? Right, so other stakeholders. We've got inadvertent or spontaneously, we came up with the public health schools and the vaccination, the humanitarian volunteers and programs as stakeholders. We named the target, of the bin Laden and any associates of bin Laden as stakeholders. We named the people getting the disease or not being protected from the disease as stakeholders. What else have we missed? Who are the other folks who might have something to say here? Scanning. You have an idea? Go ahead.
Maybe you could talk about, separate from the schools of public health who complain to the CIA, you could talk about the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, because it seems like that was a coalition that was working towards like a positive polio removal, but it seems the CIA program interrupted it, so it was like interfering with their goal.
And that may or may not be different from humanitarian volunteers. It probably overlaps.
It's probably the organizations, but I think it works anonymously.
Yeah. How about the CIA? Is the CIA a stakeholder? Talk about a challenging task. Maddie?
I definitely think this probably is more of a solution than as a stakeholder, but I think they're going to have to work on coming up with a way to get the vaccine to Pakistan without it seeming like it's with bad intentions for public health.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense.
From the point of view of public health programs. Right.
Yeah.
So I agree with that. Now I'm wondering about the Central Intelligence Agency who was not actually in the business of vaccinations, right? It was a ruse. They didn't even supply the person doing this. He had to get his own supplies. But are they a stakeholder in this case? Is the spying organization a stakeholder? Alex?
I think so. Also, in the same, I don't know if this is too broad of a definition of stakeholder, but I always thought of it as anyone who is impacted by the decision or by the outcome, and the CIA is definitely impacted because it affects their ability to ensure national security, or they feel that certainly. So
absolutely. Right, and without being judgmental, you could be judgmental and say, it isn't just the victims who are stakeholders, or you could say the CIA is in fact a victim of a failed or of a process that can no longer be used. It is their job, their mandate to get this intelligence information. and generally you have to be a little sneaky to get it. So the difference between sneaky and collateral damage is the argument here. All right, let's go on to the, not necessarily pro-con, but what are the arguments? Let's go to, I think maybe let's go to one of the questions. I have to remember where it is. Yeah, here it is. Let's go to these study questions. Let's pick, let's do the first one. Under what circumstances, if any, is the use of an ostensibly humanitarian program for ulterior purposes justified? So the argument for would be, tell me what circumstances it's justified. The argument against would be, there are no circumstances. So ostensibly humanitarian program for ulterior purposes. Now we're going to generalize, right? In order to analyze the case, we're going to try to generalize the case. So you might be doing a writing essay or writing assignment on dating your best friend's ex, but the generality that you're going to treat it with is more than just whether or not you actually have that date, right? You're going to talk about more broader relationship of, friendship bonds or friendship searching for a word, but the guidelines to friendship. Okay, so are there any, let's first talk about what circumstances there are, if any, that would allow this or justify this use of a humanitarian program for ulterior purposes. What language is there we've got the word ostensibly humanitarian, we've got ulterior. That's some language we need to clarify. Alex and then Nick.
My first reaction is to think, I guess, one way to look at it in like a utilitarian approach might be that does the humanitarian program that it's disguised as, does the actual purpose, the national security threat, do they believe that it saves more lives than the humanitarian program that they could have supplied to the people?
Yeah, so we're not talking about, is it okay to kill one man in order to save, is it okay to kill a dictator in order to save the victims of the dictator? That's a different question. We're talking about, is it okay to forego or derail humanitarian program compared to the lives saved by killing the dictator? Okay, and you're saying that let's just count the numbers. Go ahead.
So, following your comment, would you say it's fair to say that discontinuing the humanitarian program or sort of modifying its legitimacy would be a definitely bad outcome, but there's no sure gain from doing so? Like, it's not as if, in the case you brought up, where if you kill the dictator, you save the people. The intervention in this instance might not necessarily create the positive outcome.
Right.
Immediately.
It's a greater cost. The negatives are not only against the perpetrator of evil, now the negatives are against innocent bystanders. So it's not unlike victims of war, civilian victims of war, but it's a little bit more couched, isn't it? I mean, let's take it apart in that way. How is this case different from collateral damage? Civilian deaths in war. Alex? Yes.
I think that
sorry.
maybe this.
We'll get you next. It was Alex S.
Oh, my bad.
Stearns.
Okay.
That's
Um,
okay.
I was going to say because this issue or this question is because this issue is more about the trust of the humanitarian program. Is it okay to use something that is generally used to benefit others for underhanded purposes? It's less about the deaths or the numbers as it is just the trust of what this organization that people usually believe can help them.
So if it's really about the trust, and you seem to be saying that if it's about the trust, then you can't really use, or it makes it less appropriate to use a number counting justification. So what would you use instead? What perspective of ethics would you bring to, use as your justification, or what would be behind your justification? What would you say trust is?
Maybe closer to virtue or duty, I think would be what I would go for, because the humanitarian program has a responsibility to live up to what it promises for what its benefits it's going to try to provide for others. And if it's being used for underhanded purposes, then it can't really fulfill those responsibilities.
Okay, so if we say, and I think everybody's following. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Well, this just got me thinking about what if it was set up in a way that it did both, like it still was a humanitarian program with ulterior purposes, but it wasn't just completely derailed and pointless. Like that sort of changes the question if it still is doing good.
Okay, so you're saying how much is the program damaged? You want to it's like a little mini utilitarian within the bigger virtue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's certainly doable. Up to, I'm going to use a utilitarian approach to sort of quantify how much damage will be done, and then I will revert to acknowledging the virtue of maintaining the trust, because with this much damage we can maintain trust, but with this much damage we lose it. Okay. When Alex, when you were talking, a thought came to me, and this is a way to extend your argument too. So if trust is a virtue, then are there other virtues that we are deeming less valuable? So is the safety of your the right, this is, I guess it's I don't know if it's a virtue or a duty as well, but the right to a safe existence, the right to defend yourself, right to self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a virtue also?
I think you could argue it is, but like I was saying, the trust issue is the absolute core of the issue. But if you bring into what Sam said earlier, you could apply a more utilitarian way of viewing it. Is the risk of doing this outweigh the possibility of what'll happen if it all falls apart?
So I can see you guys working one of these arguments like in this hierarchy, right? Like at this level, we're going to use this, and then we're going to work our way out. But I think also when you pick something, if virtue is the be all and end all, then what makes some virtues more primary than other virtues? So you sometimes choosing between, one might be more fervent than another, and why do we have that? What is it that makes us think that? See you later, Jasmine. Okay, let's. So we have arguments. What's the flip side argument? Let's really dig into the flip side. Brittany opened it up for us by sort of saying, let's think about the other side. Let's not forget about the other side. But let's expand it a bit, because the way we're going to learn about the way we're going to be comfortable with one argument is to really understand the other. So no matter how you fall on here, we need to spend equal or, sort of serious time on both. Brittany?
Okay, so
Go
I think
ahead, Brittany.
I think a large part of it is like one of these questions here, how it's talking about to what extent should governments provide aid to countries known to harbor terrorists? And I think a part of the question is the well-being of different people. So is the well-being of these Pakistani as important as the well-being of the United States people? And I think like one of the arguments could be, and it's almost implied here, that in a time of war when the CIA is trying to kill bin Laden, the casualties on the Pakistani people coming in for treatment, and frankly even the volunteers, whatever nationality they are, isn't as important or isn't as like bad, I guess, as letting bin Laden live. So it seems to me like it's kind of a or the argument would be, well, if you let him live, then it's not just a disease, it's thousands of people potentially, and let's just get rid of this threat first, and then we can go back and deal with the disease.
Mm-hmm. That brings another question. Are there some undesirables that are more is terrorism a worse undesirable than disease? Is there a greater debt or greater loss? No death is good, but is a death from terrorism or from attack, from violence in any way, is a death from violence worse than a death from disease? Uh-huh.
I would say it is, simply because when you're murdered by someone, there's another agent on the end of it. Like at the end of the day, you can infect people intentionally, obviously, but disease is ultimately a biological process, so it's a natural thing, so to speak. And to sort of flip the argument to exploit the other side, like we've been doing, if it had been the other way around and Osama bin Laden hadn't been captured, I feel like we would have asked, well, why didn't we do more? Because I think we feel, as Westerners and victims of a terrorist attack that was, substantial, that there's something uniquely horrible about terrorism, whereas disease is it's a natural shame, but it's not a tragedy.
But now let's dig in a little bit more.
Tragedy, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Because I'm thinking about what you guys just did on how to respond globally to AIDS. And if there's a structural underpinning for a disease being worse in one place versus another, does that elevate the negativity of that disease as well? Sam?
Well, I think Nick just possibly accidentally brought up bias, where we in America are tempted to think that terrorism is worse than disease, but probably people right now in West Africa would say disease is way worse than terrorism.
So that's something. What is a perspective? What is your perspective? And we're kind of heading toward. We're going to finish up this writing assignment, and we're going to sort of then do a little sort of reviewing, and then we're going to sort of take some time to figure out how much of what we've been using. So you can kind of anticipate this while you're writing. Is how much are we relying on relativism? And versus, I don't know if that's exactly what you meant by bias, but it is connected to that. How much of our response that we advocate is based in our cultural connections or our current life experience in general. Nick?
I think we can try to mitigate that by considering each stakeholder's sort of selective biases. Because like in the United States, like we might value the threat of terrorism over the threat of polio, but in Pakistan, it was not a part of this United States versus Al Qaeda conflict until this point in time. I don't think, or at least not directly. I would argue that they would be more worried about disease.
And that's, I think, what Sam was saying there too.
Just consider that relative sense versus our imposing of our values.
And all of this is unfortunately couched in this is the information that we're given.
Yeah.
In 50 years maybe there'll be even more. I mean, I remember when the mission first was undertaken, it was like, well, there had been intelligence provided. It was just, you didn't really have any sense of how did they know where this guy was anyway, and you sort of, with time, we've certainly learned more, and one would not be shocked. I would not be shocked if with more time you learned even more information. All right, we've got about 5 minutes left, so let's look at the final question here, which is solutions sorted by those either extreme for or against, as well as those in the middle of the spectrum. So do you think that you could share a number of solutions and prioritize or put them in a hierarchy as well as a spectrum? Because I'm envisioning two sort of diagrams here. One where you've got for and against, but then another where you've got the levels that you've been saying, well, first you'd look at this, then you'd look at this, then we'd sort of build our information and we'd analyze parts of the study, parts of the story, and then add some more issues onto that story and more issues onto that story. So I hope that those are ways that can help you really flesh out what you're writing for your personal assignments. Does anybody have any questions about those or about the due date is officially tonight. If anybody wants to, if you want to pop me an email and say, listen, I have some thoughts, I'd like to include them, the answer will be yes. You may turn it in later. Yeah, Alex?
I tried to turn it in earlier, and I couldn't find the Dropbox for it. I don't know if it's
I'm not sure.
Or
I've created one. Now that you mention it, I will do it right at the end of class. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. All
right. The other thing is, I realized that I've been taking grades not on the e-college, so I'll transfer. I have a lot of transferring I need to do. I'll transfer all your old scores, your homeworks and whatnots up into e-college, and so by Wednesday you should be able to see all your updated scores and stuff. So I'm sorry, I wasn't using that grade book, and I should have been using it all along. Okay. Any other questions? I have 411, 412 on this one. I don't know. I think we are a little bit behind the rest of you. Any other questions? I don't think we have time to start the other case. And if I didn't hear from you, I hope you didn't choose to do this case. In fact, if I didn't hear from you and you were choosing to use this case, I'd like you to pick another one for obvious reasons. But I think in the end, I think we're safe. Okay, so your work between now and Wednesday is to finish up this writing assignment. Give it a good, do some background research. If you're doing something rather personally, like small scale, dating your best friend's ex, whatever, then, look up things like, psychology of interpersonal relationships and commitments, and look up some information that will flesh out your even a simple case. The ones that have to do with the writing your own letter of recommendation. I know that's very close to a lot of your hearts right now. That's not an unusual thing for professional settings. Right? I will share that because I know the bioethics team that I just worked with, they were totally unaware of this. I mean, it is a thing. If you are asked to, if you need a letter of recommendation to transfer positions professionally, it is not an uncommon, it's not universal, but it's not uncommon for a supervisor to say, well, you write the letter, I will read it and sign it. So they're not signing something they don't agree with, but they're also saying, well, you know yourself best, you know where you're headed, you know, and we do it a little bit at our school. We ask people to write sort of a profile and what your objectives are, and the teachers use that pretty actively. You know, we sort of try to use that information to flesh out our letters. So, you know, where is that along that spectrum too? But anyway, I just wanted to share that because that seemed to be kind of a shock. I don't think anybody is doing the one with the insurance. I was a little dismayed to find out how many drivers don't really understand what automobile insurance is all about, what I did that case. But I don't think any of you chose to do that one. So, you know, but make sure you understand how insurance works and what it is if you do that one. All right, I think that's my things that were my to-do list of announcements. Anybody have any other questions or anything? All right. Have a good couple of days. We'll see you on Wednesday. Take care.
Thank you.